All right, guys, here's the painting we're going to do today. So I'm just going to show you a couple of the supplies and talk through it a little bit. So what we're going to be using are just some very basic colors and about 3, maybe 4 brushes at the most. We're going to definitely use a wide 1-inch flat brush to do our background. We're going to use an angled brush, and then we're going to use a smaller angled brush as well. We will attempt a round tip brush, but that didn't go so well. So I switched over to the angle brush, which I do like a lot better. We will also be using a plunger, I like paint plungers, daughters, if you will. So these are little sponges. I've got 2 different sizes that we're going to use. And here are the paints that we're going to use today. We're going to use an ultramarine blue. We're going to use a crimson red. We're going to use titanium white, yellow medium, phthalo green, and then also some silver. All right, so those are our main colors that we're going to be using today. And then also we're going to be using a couple of plastic cups to help us get the guide on for our ornaments. This is our painting, some beautiful Christmas ornaments on a really lovely little background. And so let's get started. Get your supplies ready. Okay guys, we are going to get started on this painting, and the first thing we're going to do is work on the background. So for the background, I am going to use a really light blue. I'm only going to go about 3/4 of the way up, maybe a little bit longer than that or heavier than that. And then we are going to do a bunch of branches coming down from here. Then we'll be dropping down several ornaments. But the first thing we have to do is get that background on. So I want all of my ornaments to show up really well and have a good contrast. So I want my background part to be really light. So I'm really going to start with white and then add a little bit of blue. I'm going to put some little bubbles around the corners, and then we'll move up to the very top. So for now, we're just going to start with a titanium white, and I'm going to spray my canvas a little bit with a little bit of water, just to get that on really nice and smooth. And I'm going to just start by just doing a couple of strokes back and forth to get some white onto the board. This may take more than you expect, and don't be afraid to lay it down on the canvas and spread it out really well. You can do crisscross motions back and forth just to get this spread out and onto the canvas. And while it's still wet, this is where you want to work in the blue to make it lighter. So my palette's black, so it's hard to see, but this is a tiny bit of blue right here. So I'm just going to put a little bit on the end of my brush like that, and I'm going to start working that in to the white. Okay, I just want it to be a really faint blue. I want it to look like a lot of light right in the middle of the painting. And then I'm going to do those little bubbles on the outside edge. So take your time. We're just going to work through this light blue part. You could also do this color in a really light pink or very pale purple. Even a pale yellow would look really nice. So just a really pretty background color that you like. And I'm just going to keep working it until it's smoothed out the way that I want it, which may be a little while. Remember that this is mostly the background. You're going to have all kinds of things in front of it, and we don't want to spend too much time with like perfection of what this looks like. So the blue that I used is ultramarine blue, and So you can see that it kind of has more of a purple hue to it a little bit. Okay, and as I'm getting the color kind of smoothed out that I want on here, then I'm going to just start stroking back and forth from side to side to smooth out the paint and even the color a little bit. I want it to kind of look blotchy. I don't want it to just be one solid blue color. So I am going to just keep it kind of this little bit of this streaky. It's very, very light in color. Like I said, I am going to work on some little bubbles here in just a minute. If you guys remember when we made our banner not too long ago, that had those really cute bubbles on it, and I love those for winter time. So this will be great on a little winter project. All right, so with that finished, as far as I'm concerned, that feels finished to me. I am going to put my brush in some water. And I've got a couple of the little plunger circle sponges, and I'm going to use those. I'm going to move that over because it's making a shadow. I'm going to use those to make some bubbles all the way around here. So I'm going to pick up the blue and put a little bit more blue on there than anything. And then I'm just going to do some little twists. I'm going to let it get lighter. I'll even pick up a little bit of white. Let these go on top of each other. And then I'm going to change up the sizes as well. While your paint is a little bit wet on your board, this is a great time to do these little bubbles because it'll pick up some of the color that's already on there and blend them in really well. Pick up a little bit more blue. And I don't want to overwhelm this. I just want to do some cute little bubbles. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white, do some bright white ones on top. Some faint ones would be nice. Okay, and I'm going to add some big ones too. Just a few of these big ones. And I may even let some of these go off the board so it looks like they're coming up. If you feel like your paint's too dark, you can always put a tiny bit of water in it too. That one didn't show up, did it? Okay, so just a little twist. And maybe a few more because they're so cute. All right, if I am getting ahead of you guys, pause the video. Take time to get yours done and then meet me back here as soon as you are ready. Do not rush through this. Enjoy the process. Have fun with it. And don't get overwhelmed, okay? So now that I have my bubbles on the way that I really like them, I am going to dry this, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to start on the branches that are going to go at the very top of the canvas. Okay? Okay, guys, I am back and I am ready to put the top on this. Now, if you are not done with the background, this is a great place to go ahead and just stop, pause the video. That's Triumph, the puppy. We're going to stop. You can stop the video and just wait. Once everybody is all caught up together, your background is completely done, and it's dry, then that's a good time to go ahead and start the video back up. So the next part that we're going to do here is add the branches at the top. And we're going to bring those down and just kind of like crisscrossing and stuff. Just think of like a Christmas tree and you're just looking at those branches that are all over the place. Then we're going to drop the ornaments coming down from those. So I'm going to start with lines that are coming down like diagonals. I don't want anything to go straight down. I'm going to do kind of like angled lines, maybe slight curvature to it, so that I can base all of the little pine needles off of those, okay? The puppy's whining right now, so give me just a second. I'm going to let him out. Okay, so we're back. All right, so the brushes that I'm going to use with this part are most likely going to be like my round tip brush here, and then also an angled brush. So you can see that has a slight angle on it. If you have a flat tip brush, that's totally fine too. You want it to be a little bit on the thin side and something that's kind of clean and hasn't been overused, so that you don't have a ton of paint built up in the bristles and then you don't get a really clean line when you're trying to paint that. You want to be able to move your paint around on it. The paints that I'm going to be using are going to be some burnt sienna. I'm going to use that for kind of the base of the branches. And then I'm going to be using some yellow and then also some phthalo green. It's a pretty dark green, which is hard to see with this light. I apologize. Okay, so some phthalo green. And then I'm going to be mixing white too, because I want like variations of green in these branches as we put them on. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is starting with the actual branches themselves. I'm going to try this round tip brush. If I don't like it, I'm going to switch over and put it, use that angled brush, which I think I'll probably like more. Okay, I did take, if you saw, I picked up a little bit of that blue that I had left over on my palette and put in my brown. And that was just to kind of give it more of a shade, because this is really bright brown and I want it to be a little bit on the darker side for just my base. And most of these lines are going to get covered up, but anyway. All right, so I'm going to come down here, cross over a little bit, maybe a short one. I may even add more in this later, okay? So we're just going to let this kind of develop as it happens and enjoy the process. We want some to kind of maybe even drop down a little bit more than others. You're right here in that very front. Okay. Guys hear Triumph? Hanging out there, making lots of noise. Okay, I am going to try this other brush a little bit more, see if I like that better. Yes, smooth. You can build that up a little bit more. If you can see, I'm turning that brush right on its edge, and you can see too that I got it really, really thin as far as the paint. I wanted to wipe that down to where the brush tip was nice and the line is nice and clean. And that's doing a much better job. All right, I think this is a good way to just start, and then if we want to add more, we will. So I'm going to clean my brush and start on my green. I'm going to start with a darker green for the back part, back colors. of the little pine needles. So I'm going to use this green here. I am going to put a tiny bit of blue with it. Mix a little bit of brown just to give it a little bit more of a natural brown or green color. A little bit more earthy toned green. Play around with your colors. Have fun with them. Remember, whatever you paint on there, if you don't like it, you can paint over it. You can even go back with a little bit of water if you make a mistake and paint it off with just plain water. So the technique for doing these little branches is to follow the line of the branch and come out at like little angles, okay? Like we're making these little branches like this, okay? So you think about little pine needles hanging off, but we want it to be a little bit thick. And we don't want them to be just even, like it's just straight, 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 and then they all end at the same place. We want it to look more organic than that. So I'm just gonna, some will be thick, some will be thin. I'll bring some down a little bit longer, fill in extra space if I want to. And remember, we've got more colors that are gonna go on top of this, or more shades and variations of this green. You see I'm pulling this at coming down, but at a slight angle and curving it a little bit. You can see how it's like curving like that. Instead of going just straight, straight, straight out, it gives a more natural flow to it, the way that it would hang on a tree. See how I just covered all that one up? And at the end, I just want to like bring a little tip down like that. Okay. And I'm just going to work to fill in all of these. Do the same thing back and forth. I'm going to do this dark green to start, and then I'm going to add some variations of other green to it, some lights and darks. Decide which of the branches is going to be on top when you've crisscrossed over. And I'm going to go a little bit heavier on the one that I want to be on top so that it kind of overpowers what's happening there. You can see the difference between the two strokes as well. This one's very fine and this one is heavier. And the way to achieve that look is to actually just put more pressure or less pressure on the brush when you're making the strokes. Also, if you want the very thin look, you want to maybe take a little bit of paint off the edges to make sure you're not laying down too much paint at one time. Triumph's back and he wants in. Pause. you have never done any kind of painting like this before, use a piece of paper beside of you. Get a piece of watercolor paper, which is really nice and heavy, and use the opportunity to kind of practice those strokes before you put them down on your canvas. I'm going to change my canvas position a little bit so I can get to this a little bit better. This is filling up more. I still feel like I want the branches to really overwhelm the whole top. So I'm going to probably add a few more in here. Okay, now that I've got plenty of like darker green on there, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of white with my green. And I'm going to mix a little yellow in here too. I'm getting a little excited about all the paint. So my brush is getting loaded up. So I need to take the time and clean it out. Or at least like clean up the edge there. Okay, so at the top, you see all these little extra, like little white spaces. I just want to fill it in with a little bit of like this light green. So it feels like all you're seeing is the green of the tree. So just fill in the white space there. And just light, very light brush strokes to do a little bit of that. And then I'm just going to add a few little extra hidden branches. In there. Okay. All right, so this is another good place to pause and stop for just a minute. Get caught up to where you want to be. Make sure that you have your branches just the way that you want them. I'm going to push this up a little bit so you can see the whole thing right now. And now we have all of this space where we can put our ornaments. So we're going to drop those down and we're going to put them in different spaces. They're not going to be all the way just straight across. This is also so I want you to start planning now how many ornaments you're going to put on there. So I'm going to use basically a cup so that I can paint the outside edge of the cup. We've done this before with watercolor before. So I'm going to paint a little bit of the paint color that I want for the base of where I want this ornament. And then I'm going to press it, give it a little bit of a twist back and forth to where it just gives me a good stamp of that. So I have that shape. It's nice and round. It's kind of like just giving me a beginning of the way that that is going to go. So I have several different sizes of cups that I can use to make the ornaments if I want something really big, if I want something kind of medium. I even have a really tiny one. But this project can be done to where you can do anything with it. I can make a bunch of ornaments across here and just make them really creative and do different things with them, from their colors to the designs that are on them. I can use this to write words across here. You could put a word in each one of the ornaments so that it says something, joy to the world. If you wanted to use this to write the names of everybody in your family, you could do an ornament for each person and write their name. You could even do an ornament that spells out somebody's last name, or an ornament for each letter of a word like rejoice or peace or love or joy, something to do with Christmas. So plan this out, figure out how many ornaments you want to have on here, plan out how many it's going to take, what sizes you want to do, and then kind of place them out to see how many you will be able to put on there. So you want to make sure that you have a word or what your creative thing is going to have enough space. So plan that out now, and then when we jump back in, we're going to go ahead and put the ornaments on, and I'm going to show you how that's done, and then you can finish up your painting, okay? Okay, I have decided to do 4 ornaments on mine, and I am going to do words on each one, and I'm going to say joy, to, and the, and then world, and I'm going to let this one be like the biggest one. So I have 3 different sizes that I'm using. So joy, to, since to is a little word, to, the, and then world being the biggest one. I'm going to put that over here like that. So I'm going to start with my my colors that I've decided on, and the first one I'm going to use is a yellow for the joy. So I'm going to take the cup and I'm going to paint the rim of this with just a very base yellow, and then when I am done with that, I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that circle to finish the whole ornament using a little bit of light and a little bit of dark. I want to load this up enough that I'm going to put a pretty good little stamp on it. So you see it's got a pretty good amount on there. So I'm going to put joy, and I'm just going to go right over top of the little bubbles that we've made. Okay, because it's, and you can see the little circle there. All right, so now that I have that on there, I'm going to lighten this up a lot with some white. So I'm going to take some of my white over here with the yellow, because I want to brighten yellow up. The yellow has a tendency to be very transparent with paint when you use it, so straight out of the bottle. So you'll want to like lighten it up. So I've put some white here, and then I'm just going to take and paint from the inside to the outside, and then I'm going to use the edge of my brush to follow the line of the circle. This is also a good time to decide where the light is coming from on your painting, so that you can put maybe some highlights on one side and you can make a little bit darker on the other side. So I'm going to use the darkest yellow on this side. You can see a little bit of a difference in color there. And I'm going to keep my strokes rounded and following the line of that circle. And then I'm going to pick up some of my brightest white, and I'm going to go to the opposite side and add some of that bright white. When this is dry, I will probably go back in and add even a brighter highlight to it. As you add those colors in, sometimes it just wants to keep blending, and so sometimes we have to wait till it dries completely. But right now I just want kind of a variation of color of the yellow and going from the shade to the tint, so from dark to the light. And yellow is a hard one to darken. You don't want to ever darken yellow with, you don't want to darken it with black because it will make it look kind of green. So it's actually better to use a tiny bit of brown if you want to darken up some yellow. It will make it look like what you call an ochre yellow, and you may be like, that looks kind of gross, but it does the job for just a slight little shade without overwhelming it with black. And that can blend right in. Okay, so I made a nice little shadow or shading, and oops, got a little green in that. Pick up some of that clean white, blend that back in the other direction. Okay, so that's got the yellow one. The next color that I am going to do is red. So I have a crimson red. This is really a darker red, so I am probably going to use a little bit more white in it as well. This will actually make a nice shadow of its own self, and then just adding a little bit of white to it is going to lighten it up quite a bit. The problem with red, not that it's a problem if you love pink, but when you see the tint of red, it's pink. So you want to be careful not to overwhelm it with the white, right? So clean brush. And I'm going to use the little one because this is Joy, and then 2. So I'm going to use a little bit of the red on the outside here. Sorry, I was actually painting that away from the camera. Smart. Okay. Right, so Joy, 2, and then the world, the above and the world. I'm going to put this one about right here. Just wiggle it back and forth a little bit. Make sure you get that paint in the circle. That's good enough. Okay. Having a light background under the red helps to lighten it up. But it also sometimes will cause a frustration because you feel like you're not getting enough red on there. With this red, because it happens to be rather dark, this is making it a little bit nicer because it's making that red a little brighter than what it originally would have been. So what I'm going to do for this one to give it shadow and then to give a little bit of a highlight with the lighter color, I'm going to pick up a little bit of green. Okay, so I've got this green sitting over here on my palette. I'm going to put a little bit of green over here near my red. I'm just going to mix a little bit of that together, and that's going to make more like a burgundy color. So that is what I want for my shadow, and I just want a slight shadow, so if it comes in a little bit too dark, I'm going to put probably some more red right on top of it, but this is what I'm kind of looking for. And then kind of feather it out around so it kind of blends in. Okay, so that gives me a little bit of a dark edge on the outside. And I'm going to clean my brush now between that because I do not want to put white in that red and have dark on my brush, because that's really just going to make a gray. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of white here, pick up some red. Okay, still want it a little bit lighter. Okay, all right, now we're going to move on to the blue. Clean my brush again. And it's going to be the same size as the yellow. All right, so I've got a clean one here. This blue is kind of weird. It's a little bit cakey. So I'm going to put just a tiny bit of water in it to thin it out a little bit, so it'll go on a little bit smoother. Okay. Okay. Can you hear the clock in the background? Okay, there's the blue. We're going to go about right here. Maybe, do we go up? Joy to the world. Maybe up a little bit. Okay, wiggle it. Okay, that one went on a little bit messy because that blue is was just weird and cakey. So I'm going to smooth it out a little bit. You can see this is going on kind of transparent. With the blue, when I want to darken it, I can do one of two things. I can put a little bit of green in it, or I can put some black in it. I happen to have green on the plate, so putting the blue and the green together makes more of a turquoise. So if you want it even darker, you can put a tiny bit of red in it. I took that blue and put a little bit of that green in it. Okay, so the reason that this works to make this a darker color is because taking some red and taking some green means that you're actually taking some red and blue and yellow. So red and yellow are the two colors that combine and make the opposite color on the color wheel of blue, which would be orange. And throwing that in there creates kind of a neutral. So that green is just a really nice dark green anyway, so I just thought that would make a nice dark shadow. With some of your colors, you may find that you need to, one of two things, either put a primer down, which is a base color to cover up what's underneath. Gray is always a good prime color or primer color to put down because it's very neutral. It's not too bright like white would be underneath something. It makes other colors stand out a little bit more vibrantly. Or you can also just paint something more than one time. Put a second layer on it and make it darker if you desire. Okay, that brush is not happy. Alrighty. All right, now I'm going to add a little bit of a highlight to this blue. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of white here. Not too much. Okay. And then my last color, I was going to do green. But I'm not sure. I think I might want to do like teal. Okay. And that one's for world. So maybe we'll do it in another bluish green color. Okay, I'm not sure if that's going to go well because that's going to be too much blue beside of each other. We could do a purple. Purple would be fun. Okay, sorry I'm thinking too much about this. All right, let me clean my brush. I'm going to get some purple or make some purple really quick, and then we'll get back to this. Okay, so I made a little bit of purple over here. It's hard to see. It's more of a raspberry purple. I am going to probably put some white with this too, to it'll brighten it up a little bit. So we'll get, there we go. Okay. And this is going to be the biggest one. The lip of this cup is not super smooth. But as long as I can get just the basic shape of the circle, that will help us. Sorry, I pause when I talk, thinking through it. Okay, joy to the world. We have a world. Oops, sorry. Shaking it about. I put a little bit of water on my brush because this paint is so thick and does not want to smooth out. So I'm just going to thin it out a little bit with some water while I'm working. Okay. I'm going to smooth this one out just a little bit, and then we're going to have to wait till these are completely dry before we write any words on them. I'm likely going to use paint pen, Posca, or even a Sharpie to write the letters on here, just so it's a little bit easier than trying to paint these on. But what I want to do to finish off the ornaments is to create a little topper here, and then I'm going to do little dots that connect it like a little chain to the branches that they're closest to, and just make them to where they look like they're kind of hooked on to one of the branches above it. So we can, if you need to pause the video, this is another good place to pause. Get everything cleaned up the way that you want it before we start on the toppers and the chain at the top. Okay, I have picked up a little bit of silver paint, and so I'm going to use that to make the toppers and the little chain that goes up to the branch that I want to attach it to. So I've picked up a little bit of a smaller brush to do this with, to get that on there, because it's a little bit more of a detail. All right. All right, so the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do kind of like a little angle here and an angle here, like they're facing each other. And then I'm going to go across. And then I'm going to fill it in. And I'm going to punch that in with this brush to where it looks a little bit on the textured side. And then I'm even going to pick up a tiny bit of like this darker blue that I have to the side. Which made that kind of green. And it's just trying to give it a little bit of a shadow to the metal part that it's hanging from. If you want to, you can make the ones that are smaller, smaller. Okay, and if you want to, you can actually make a little tiny like ring at the top. And then last I'm going to do the little dots to the top. And so I'm going to use the back of my brush. So I'm going to just use this part as a dotter. And I'm going to go straight up and I'm going to choose like the branch here. So and this one's going to go to that really top branch up there. So I'm going to go a little bit further up. some of my dots. Somehow I got some purple here. Just put a little bit of water on my paintbrush, guys, to wipe that off. When you go to write your words, you may want to do them like in chalk on there first, or practice some of your letters on a piece of paper to determine what you want to do on it. If you don't want to do words or letters, don't do it. You can add designs, make polka dots, do stripes, create plaids. Do what you want with it. Make it really fun. Okay. Okay. All right. So this little painting is pretty much done with the exception of me writing Joy to the World on there. So that's the very last step. I'll be right back and we're going to get those words on. Okay, I did a couple of things that I want to tell you about before I do my letters. Number one, the silver was super cute, so I decided to take some of the silver and put it on my little plunger and add some extra dots, and even went over top of some of the original dots with that silver to just give it, oops, an extra shine, okay? So you can kind of see that reflection. Also, I tried the silver as my reflection or little highlight on the blue, and I love it. So I'm going to do the same thing on each of these before I put the words on there. Now to do that, I didn't want to put like really heavy silver on there. So I'm going to have a little, I'm going to take this little cup, I'm going to put a little bit of water in it, just spray it. And then make sure that my brush is clean. And then I'm going to put a little silver on my brush and then thin it out. I don't want it to be too wet, but I don't want it to be too dry either, because I don't want it to be really, really heavy when it goes on there. Okay, so I'm going to paint it on my finger to try it out. And I feel like it needs to be just a smidge thicker. I'm going to use that as my palette for now. And I'm going to do this little highlight. I'm going to hold the angle brush with this angle to the outside and that angle to the inside. So the higher angle goes to the inside, and I'm just going to follow the curve slightly. Okay, and then same thing up here. But I'm going to do that one a little bit heavier because this is a little bit bigger. And then just a little one here. And I really like that. Okay, cool. All right, next to write our words. Joy to the World is what I'm planning on writing. I'm a little worried about the white showing up on that yellow. So I'm going to do it in white. And then if for some reason it doesn't show up as much, then I may do a little bit of a black outline around all of the words, because we're going from some pretty contrasting colors here with this bright yellow and then the darker purple. White's going to show up really well on these three, but it may not show up as well on the yellow. Okay, so I'm going to do lowercase and cursive. Put my dot in there. Okay. For the 2 and the world, I'm going to do that in manuscript. Okay, and lastly, the word world. When you are doing this, you need to make sure that the paint that you put on is completely dry before you try to use markers on these. Okay, I'm going to shake this up just a little bit. Triumph sounds some friend or hears some friends outside, and he wants to go join them. Okay, joy to the world. I'm going to work on these letters a little bit more in my own time, but this painting is finished, and I hope you make yours super creative and just the way you want it. All right, see you guys next time or later today.